We're talking about listening, learning to listen. It sounds pretty simple. I mean, we all have ears, right? But it's not that simple. Jesus said, "He who has ears, let him hear." In other words, you might have ears, but you're still hearing impaired. There's something impairing, blocking your ability to listen well. We've been saying three things are critical for us to learn to listen. We must understand, number one, the goal of all communication, which is to be understood. No one communicates with a goal to be misunderstood. Number two, we must know what blocks the goal of communication and remove it. Number three, we must know what hits the goal of communication and use it. So what blocks understanding? I've said for years there are 5 levels of listening, and the first 3 are all in the block category. The first one I define as just simply not listening, which could feel like, well, how does that even make the list? Right? Because we are all guilty of it. And it's something that needs to be removed in order to listen well, to understand others. In not listening, I put those into 3 categories that should alert us to something we can do that we can be proactively able to remove in order to open up our ears to hear, to become hearing functional, not hearing impaired. The first one is to recognize that when you are overworked, you're tired. And when you're tired, you do not listen well. You will find yourself just not able to listen because you're exhausted. Pay attention. When you're tired, get some rest. And if you're overworked, maybe get more balance. The second one is when you're overcommitted. When you have got way too many things that you're juggling, it impairs your hearing. You don't listen well because your mind is constantly thinking about the next ball that might drop. If you are overcommitted, seriously, make some adjustments. You're the one saying yes. Maybe it's time to say no so you can have the bandwidth to really hear those around you. The last one is we're over-phoned. We're over-phoned. I'm just finishing a book that I've been reading called The Anxious Generation. This entire book is about the fact that Gen Z is the anxious generation. And the reason why Gen Z is so much more anxious, depressed, and isolated than previous generations is because they are over-phoned. They were children that were raised on a screen. They didn't get to go out and play. They stayed inside on their phone. And as we allowed them to be over-phoned, we too are over-phoned. And when that takes place, it interrupts our ability to listen well. This is probably the one you and I get the most, right? If someone has their phone with them and you are trying to have a conversation, how do you feel when the phone dings or vibrates and immediately distracts them from the conversation they're having with you? Right? You feel what? You feel interrupted at the least and devalued and disrespected. Now, not only do you feel this when it happens to you, but others feel it when it takes place with your phone. Interesting, in the book, The Anxious Generation, I could spend the next 20 minutes telling you about stats that this research team has done on those of us who can't seem to set our phone down, take it with us everywhere, including to bed, and the ill effects that it creates on our brain and on our relationships. Children were asked if they felt heard by their parents, heard and understood. The majority of Gen Z students said no, they don't. And the top reason why is that their parents are distracted by their phones. The top reason why they do not feel understood by their parents is because their parents are distracted by their phones. This affects every relationship, especially Gen Z. They are the most anxious, distracted, depressed, mentally vulnerable generation ever to have been studied because of the effects of the smartphone doing something we should be smart enough to detect is really dumb, robbing us of true relationship for pseudo relationship. Just because it's social media doesn't mean it meets your social needs. In fact, it doesn't. When we are overphoned, it robs us of listening, and we simply don't listen. A survey was done about the phone. If the phone, so the people in the survey, a test was done, a case study. Recipients would come into a relationship where they'd have a conversation. In one scenario, they had the phone in their pocket on vibrate. On another scenario, they had the phone sitting on the table next to them. On the third scenario, they had the phone was completely left out of the room. The only scenario where the other person felt like there was truly a connection in relational understanding was the one where the phone was left out of the room, completely out of the space. Overphoned, overcommitted, and overworked is a guaranteed way of making sure the people around you are not understood. Let me say the point again. Know what blocks the goal to good communication and remove it. My hope is that today you'll take this first thing that's a barrier, not listening, seriously, and do some removal. I'll see you tomorrow.